Three things to like with the WHITIN Barefoot Shoe high top model here. Number one, if you want a beginner-friendly high top pseudo barefoot shoe, this can be a really good option to look into at a very fair price. So this model costs around $40 to $50, and it's a good option for beginners because one, it has a nice wide construction to help ease you into wider shoes, but two, and more importantly, it does have a slightly thicker outsole here. So this rubber is a little bit thicker compared to your more premium barefoot shoes that have lower stack heights. So you will get a little bit more cushion with the shoe, which makes it, in my opinion, better for people getting into barefoot shoes. The second pro with this model is if you want a barefoot shoe with a little bit more ankle support, this can be a viable option. Now this upper is still pretty flimsy, but there is a little bit of a boot cup here, and if you lace this all the way up, you will get more ankle support. So if that is something you're after with a more minimalist feeling shoe, this can also be a really good model for that ask. The third thing to like with this shoe is it does a really good job, I think, for casual wear and being comfortable, but then you can also wear it to the gym to certain extents. With this shoe, I have primarily worn them for my upper body days and for my lower body days where I'm doing just more general strength stuff. I'm not doing anything crazy with power or whatnot, because with this upper, you can have some security issues and it just doesn't do the best with lockdown. But if you're doing things like leg presses, any form of split squat and lunge, the shoe will be okay enough for those asks. And so if you want that barefoot shoe for rocking out and about casually and then doing some strength training in, this can be a good option. But now let's talk about a couple of cons that I have with the WHITIN high-top model. The first con that I have with this shoe is the outsole squeaks a lot on different surfaces. So this is going to be a shoe that makes a lot of sounds if you're walking on wood floors or like tile floors. And so if that is something that you're going to be constantly walking on. So for example, if you work retail and you're on your feet all day and you can be prone to dragging your feet sometimes, like myself when I get tired and whatnot, this will be a squeaky shoe. So just keep that in mind. This rubber is grippy, which is nice for grip, but it's not the most silent on different surfaces. So it is a squeakier rubber. It has that kind of like cheaper rubber feel to where it feels really grippy, but then it squeaks a lot on different surfaces. The second con that I have with this shoe is if you buy them for working out, do note you're gonna have some limitations with this model. The upper security isn't the best, so if you're gonna be doing anything power related, you might wanna look into other options out there. This model I don't think is gonna give you the best security. So just keep in mind that if you do buy the shoe for working out, like I said in my pros, it's good for strength stuff, but it's not gonna be your best for more dynamic and power focused workouts. Even doing certain kettlebell flows with this shoe, I didn't necessarily love how I felt in it, so just keep that in mind if that's you. The third con that I have with this model is the tongue construction, and this is honestly kind of be expected with a cheaper shoe like this, but there is no tongue gusset, and so if you are big on tongue security, this shoe's tongue is likely not going to stay the most secure for you, and if you're like myself and you like to wear them loose, just expect that tongue to move a little bit. Honestly, the tongue is pretty lightweight, so it doesn't cause any friction, so it doesn't really bother from a rub point of view, but it's not the most conducive to folks like myself who can be a bit more OCD with their tongues. But for the price point, I honestly didn't expect the shoe to have a gusset or like a nice, more secure premium fit. So it is one of those give and takes with the more budget-friendly nature of this model. So to break down the performance of the shoe, I'll discuss how they do for lifting, some cross training, and then daily wear. I did not run in this shoe. This is not a shoe that I would recommend running in if that's something you're after. So when it comes to lifting, the shoe does an okay job. If you are going to be doing static strength work, it will work fine. Don't overcomplicate it, don't overthink it. You can also lace it up and get a bit more security with it, so you will get a little bit more out of the shoe if you want that security for, let's say, like quad biased leg presses and you're getting heavy and you want to make sure you're locked down. This shoe can work. The only issue that I have with this shoe for certain lifting contexts is anything sumo, for example, you might have some spillover issues. There are also, I think, better barefoot shoes out there for that ask. And then also, if you're going to be doing anything dynamic, so think like power cleans or snatches or anything more dynamic where you're going to be moving those feet and catching weight, that's where this model might also fall short just due to that upper security. But from a more traditional strength training standpoint, and for beginners who are not going crazy ham in the gym, the shoe will work. It is stable enough to train really heavy in because that low stack height, even though it is a little bit higher than other barefoot shoes, so I wouldn't stress that detail either. When it comes to cross training, the shoe can technically work for certain things, but there will be a drop off when you get more specific. This would not be my go-to shoe for broad jumps, skater jumps, basically anything where you're going to be putting a lot of stress into the lateral upper of the shoe or deep into the toe box. I don't love the security of this shoe for that. It's a little bit more general. When I was doing some of my kettlebell snatch step-ups, this shoe was okay. It didn't really bother me too much, but you will feel that tongue start to move, for example, and it's not the most conducive, I think, to really locking on that foot for that context. So if you do buy this shoe for cross training, I have mentioned it already in this video, but do note it will have some fall off there. For daily wear, how does this shoe perform? Honestly, I really like them for daily wear. I love high top shoes, and I've actually got a couple compliments on this shoe just saying that they look pretty good. And honestly, I think for the price point, they do look decent. There's not a ton of branding. You just have some WHITIN branding up here on the tongue, which you can't really see. And if you want a nice casual wide toe box shoe that has a bit more cushion for daily wear and you don't want to go full-on true barefoot shoe, this can be a great option. It's very comfortable, very easy to wear, and the outsole does grip really well on different surfaces. Sans the squeakiness, but just keep your feet up and don't drag your feet, and you should be okay on that front as well. So when it comes to lifting, I would give this shoe a 7.5 out of 10. When it comes to cross training, I'd give this shoe a 6.5 out of 10. And for daily wear, I would give this shoe an 8.5, 8 out of 10. When it comes to the price of the WHITIN high-top shoe, you can expect to pay around $44. Generally anywhere between like 40 and 50 I've seen for different colorways. And honestly, for what this shoe is, I think the price point is pretty fair. If you buy this shoe as just a shoe to beat up and not feel guilty about because of the price, this can be a really good option to look into. All right, now let's answer the question, who should buy the WHITIN high-top barefoot shoe? Number one, beginners getting into barefoot shoes. If you like high top shoes, if you're traditionally in Converse or Vans Skate Highs, this can be a really good option to go with. It is super beginner friendly, has a great price point, and it's really good, I think, entry shoe to get you into more minimalist feeling shoes. The second context where I think this shoe makes a lot of sense is if you want a shoe just to beat up and not go crazy with the price on, this can be a great option. Honestly, $40 to $50 for the shoe, I think it is fair. Now granted, it is a white labeled shoe on Amazon, so keep that in mind. You are kind of supporting this weird industry of, you know, companies marking down models, white labeling them, and pumping out kind of like cheaper products. But honestly, if you're just getting into barefoot shoes or you don't have the means to drop on a Vivo Barefoot model, for example, it's a great option to go with. The third context where I think this shoe makes a lot of sense is for that person that wants that shoe for daily driving, but then also doing some general strength work. Upper body days, chiller lower body days. This shoe does a great job. Now, who should pass on this shoe? Number one, if you want a shoe that's gonna give you the most ground feel that has a high top, you're gonna wanna probably go with something like the Advances Apex Power High Top. That is gonna be a lot more dialed for lifting. It still has that higher boot, and it's gonna give you a lot more ground feel and grip, which is gonna optimize that shoe for lifting and like sumo deadlifting and powerlifting asks. Another context where you want to pass on this shoe is if you want something that looks a little bit more formal, you might not want to get this shoe. I would say that this shoe is towing the line for business casual settings. Like, it has got to be very casual, I think, to rock this model. Like, it does have a clean look, sure, but it also does kind of have this cheaper vibe. So if you do want a high top shoe that does look a little bit more business casual, I believe Field Grounds has some good options for that. They might look a little bit more classy than this shoe. And the third context where the shoe falls short is, look, if you're big on having a tongue that doesn't slide around every time you put your shoe on and move, this would be a model that you're gonna want to pass on just because this lack of gusset I could see bothering people. And then also with this lightweight mesh knit upper, it's not the warmest shoe on the market either. So if you are living in frigid settings and you want a shoe for commuting and whatnot, this will probably be a pass when you're deep into winter. So when it comes to the sizing and fit of the WHITIN high-top model, I think most folks should be safe going true to size in this shoe. The length runs pretty true and they are pretty wide. They don't have a super aggressive midfoot, so they should work for a lot of different foot anatomies. You can also take this insole out if you want, and it's gonna give you even more upper volume. So if you have a wicked thick foot or a very high instep and you like to wear your shoes wicked loose, that is something you can do in this model, and you should be okay doing so. I also like that WHITIN does have half sizes in this shoe, so it makes it a little bit more tolerable for a lot of different folks and sizing asks, but true to size I think should be the call for most folks. All right, so when looking at the weight drop and insole in the WHITIN high-top shoe here, for my size 10 model here, we have a weight of 11.20 ounces. The shoe's heel to toe drop sits at 0 millimeters, and this model once again has a thin foam removable insole. All right, now let's break down the construction of the WHITIN high-top shoe. So up here on the toe box, we do have a little bit of an internal toe guard, so you do get a bit of structure up here around the toe. And then looking at the upper, you have this knit upper that runs throughout the entirety of the shoe. It has a bit of stretch, and that's also why I don't love it from a security standpoint. It just doesn't lock you down that much, and because we don't have any lateral sidewalls here, it's gonna be a shoe that I think is gonna have a bit more spillover. Back here in the boot, we do have an additional layer to help give additional security, and this internal construction up here at the boot, it is a little bit padded, like it's not overly padded, but it does have some cushion to help limit that friction. Looking at the midfoot, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 eyelets that go up. The base of the eyelets here does have a little bit of stretch, and then we also have that tongue with the WHITIN branding. It's a softer knit material as well, and there is a single loop here and no gusset once again. Looking at the sole, you have a full rubber sole that runs throughout. It is pretty standard regarding its construction. You have that traditional sole that's used in WHITIN models and a lot of white labeled barefoot shoes. shoes, and so you will probably see a shoe very similar to this that's not WHITIN. That's half of the gripe that I have with shoes like this. And then we also have that removable foam insole once again, and the internal construction does have this kind of like finished appeal, so you can rock it without that insole if you want a bit more ground feel in the shoe. If you have additional questions on this model though, drop a comment down below. All right, now would I buy this shoe again? Honestly, yes. My pair has held up pretty well. It's delivered on exactly what I wanted it to be, which is a shoe that I can beat up, not feel too bad about, but then also wear to the gym or with sweats and look pretty good. And this model has delivered. So if you're a beginner and you want that barefoot shoe that has a really good entry price point, that's going to give you a bit more cushion than your more traditional Vivo Barefoot Tolos and models with really low stack heights that are going to give you a true barefoot shoe feel, this is a good option to go with. If you have additional questions on this model, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.